Hello, today we're going to be going over everything you need to know about raised garden beds in Factory Town Tycoon. We're going to go over all the different levels of them. As you can see right here, we got the basic raised garden bed, we got the normal one, and we have the advanced one. We're going to go over the pros and cons between all of them. Then we're going to look at if the more expensive ones are really worth it. Then I'm going to go over all the different ways to automate its components, including the logs, the seeds, the compost, and the water. And then finally, we'll go over all the different strategies involved. Let's get into it. Alright, first up is the basic garden bed. It can be crafted with 4 nails, 4 wooden frames, and 8 pillars. It can either be harvested by hand, or it can be harvested using a garden harvester. Each garden bed can only grow one thing at a time. It accepts all 3 tree types of oak, pine, and palm seeds, as well as cotton seeds and dye seeds. Each different plant has its own amount of time that it takes to grow and its own yield per plant. When it comes to a basic garden bed, all you have to worry about is how you harvest the logs and how you resupply it with seeds. When you're first starting with garden beds, you'll most likely be placing all the seeds in manually. The most amount of beds one garden harvester can reach is 9, if you arrange them all together in a 3x3 pattern like this. However, when it comes to automation, the most you'll be doing is 6, because there needs to be a row for a conveyor to be inserted to put all the materials through it. The easiest way to create an automatic seed feeding system is to just have 2 long conveyors running back and forth, putting it on a loop. So we'll just have one long conveyor here and put another one right there. Grab a conveyor sorter and then get 2 more long conveyors to attach this. Make sure this is set to the right direction to all. And then on this side we'll have our storage and our storage crane. Put the crane right in front. Then we'll put the storage right near it so it turns green. That means it's connected. And then we'll go ahead and attach our other raised garden beds. When you're placing them, make sure that this higher part is going along with the conveyor, because if you don't do that, then it's going to cut into the conveyor and it won't let anything pass. And then again, just place them into each other. And then for the garden harvester, you can just get as close as you can right here. Then we can check by clicking this little green hand right here. Click on it and it will show us the whole area. So this barely just collects everything. And then you'll fill your storage up with any seeds that you've chosen. Then you'll go over to the storage crane and you'll set it to the seed and you'll give it a timer. Do 100. Turn it on, and then this will automatically go back and forth, spitting out all those seeds. Here it spits out the first one, they'll get collected by these beds. And if there's nothing else for this to fill up, then it'll just get collected, and it'll go straight back into the storage. And then you just want to grab a conveyor, put it next to your garden harvester, and you can give it a certain timer of delay for how quickly you want it to harvest. Turn it on, and then it'll collect all the logs and it'll auto replant them as long as you keep this full. Alright, and that covers everything you need to know about the basic garden bed. Now we'll move on to the normal garden bed. The recipe for a normal garden bed is you take the basic one and you add on 20 nails and 1 storage barrel. The difference between the 2 garden beds is that this normal one now has 2 different slots. The second slot being for compost. Garden beds that are fertilized with compost grow twice as fast, meaning your yield would double. And as a bonus, fertilized plants have a chance to produce seeds when they're harvested. This means that with the addition of compost to your farm, seeds become a renewable resource, as opposed to having to refill them every so often. The composting process requires 1 shredder and 1 composter. You only need a small amount of your logs to be put towards the composting process to account for all of your garden beds. The process is very straightforward. All you do is input a log that turns into biomass, and the biomass turns straight into compost. But now that we're working with 2 inputs, that 1 barrel won't work. So instead, we need to switch over to something else. We're going to use the same system that we did before, just change it up a little bit at the end. So instead of using 1 storage crane, now we're going to need 2. When we go to assemble this, we're going to put the grid size down to 0, and you want to get it as close as you can this way, but also not in the middle. So we're going to get as close as we can to this garden bed, move it over so that it's not exactly in the center, place it, perfect. It's not in the center, so when the seeds come through, they don't run into it. And then we'll place another one right behind it, just like that. Now instead of using a barrel, we're going to be using an advanced storage rack. And then we can place it going right into those two. Just like that. You can see that the green light is on for both of them. And then you go back to these two storage cranes. And you just set them to the appropriate thing. We're going to say seed for this one. And then for this one, we'll put compost. You can see the little icons right there. The advanced storage rack allows you to account for 4 different items at once. So we can put anything we need in here and just suck it out with these storage cranes. And then for the garden harvester, you want to place it so that it lines up with this conveyor right here. And if you click on this, you can see that yes, it still does reach. The reason we're placing this garden harvester this far back is that our log output needs to go on conveyor that goes back into its system. Because remember, the fertilized plants do produce seeds, so we need to be able to pick those seeds and put it back into the storage. So when we run the conveyor this way, we can go ahead and grab a conveyor sorter and line it up to crisscross over that output, catch all the seeds and put them back into the system. So we would just set this to seeds, turn it the right way. Now whenever this is finished harvesting, it'll pick up the seeds and put it back into the system. And this is also how we will put the fertilizer into the system as well. I went ahead and color coded it so that this green is the compost seed loop, this brown is the log output, and then this is the seed compost input as well as the seed catcher. If you're looking forward to strictly using this as a fuel farm, then you can easily turn all these logs into charcoal with a kiln. You'll just put a conveyor right here, and then place a kiln as close as you can right next to here. Make sure that the output is on this side, and then just place a conveyor. Then you can jump start the kiln with a fire log. Then turn your garden harvester on. All the logs will be placed onto the conveyor and go straight into the kiln. And then the charcoal will be outputted. And you saw the seeds get put back into the system. Now all we have to worry about is inputting the compost, in which we'll put it in right through this conveyor sorter. We'll just place a corner going into the sorter, followed by a composter and a shredder. Then just hook it up to a garden harvester with a bed available, and this will be your compost production. So you can give it its own seed bank and seed conveyor system, and it will be constantly producing you compost for your main fuel system. I went ahead and color coded everything, make sure everything is turned the right way. And just like that, by introducing compost and a kiln, you've doubled the speed at which you produce fuel, and you've greatly improved the efficiency of the type of fuel you produce by switching from logs to charcoal. Alright, now we'll move on to the advanced garden bed. It's crafted with the previous normal garden bed along with 30 nails and one big storage barrel. Now it has 3 slots with your seeds, compost, and canned water. The benefit of adding canned water is that it may give up to double the original yield of the first one. So while the fertilizer makes your crops grow twice as fast, the water doubles the yield on top of that. So if the basic garden bed is a 1x and the normal garden bed is a 2x, the advanced garden bed would be a 4x on your yield. You just have to include all previous fertilizer processes and then all the new processes for water that I'm about to show you. It does require you to be quite a bit of your way into the game. Advanced garden beds shouldn't really be considered until you're after the engine age and you're into fully automating several things on your plot, because it does require mining, drill heads, fuel, and smelting ores. Here's what the water production process looks like. It includes a mining drill, a smelter, a blacksmith, and a new ground pump. So first you'll need to make the tin ore, and then you'll need to smelt it, and then it takes 3 of them to turn it into tin cans, and then finally you can fill the tin cans in water and send it into the system. I just color coded it and added it to the system. So in order to include the water in the system, you'll need to constantly be supplying this process right here, drill heads and fuel. You'll send those 2 through the system, and when the water is produced, you'll just need to be able to extract it and put it into the system. But now since we added water, we will have to update our dispensing system. So the only issue with the new system that we're implementing is that you can't stack 3 storage cranes right on top of each other. Before we were using 2, but now when we're adding water, we need to fit in 1 more. So instead we'll be arranging them like this, and we'll need to shuffle around our previous arrangement to accommodate this. Since we're rearranging things, we'll also need to learn how to stack conveyor sorters. We'll be merging them together like this. This is possible in the first grid size. You just line them into each other. This way we can pick up all of the items while still allowing the logs to pass through to the kiln. So coming back over to our previous system, we'll want to stack these 3 sorters right on top of each other and flip and move the long conveyor over. Then we can take our storage rack and place it on top, facing this way. Then we can squeeze our garden harvester right back in. And after this, you'll want to place a T-joint right onto here, facing this way. And then you'll want to finish your feeding loop again. And then you'll place one more conveyor right here. And this is actually the new spot where we are going to pull all the materials out of. We're going to use this side instead of this conveyor front. So grab your storage cranes and just place them onto here. And then the problem is attaching this third one. What we want to do is create a platform going up to it so we can set it on the ground right in front of it. So we can get a long ramp, place it right here, and then we can get a large floor piece, place it right here, delete that one, get another large floor piece, place it right here, build that up right there. Then we can take our storage crane, then we just turn off our prompts, and then we go down in grid size 1, and we'll just try to place this as best as we can right here. Alright, the conveyor is going to take it, but we can walk up to it and place it right there. Perfect. Then we can just remove this floor. Alright, so now all of our seeds, compost, and water will come up through here and go into the system. And then we can set each one of these storage cranes to an individual seed. We can set it to a container. And then we can set this to a compost. We can put each of them on a timing and enable them with an amount. And they will all get spit into the system, come back through, and then get collected from these sorters right here. And then get collected from these sorters right here, in which will go back up and create a loop. We can move this conveyor over just to ensure that all the logs do get into the kiln right here, and then get back to charcoal. So including this compost setup and including this water setup, you can link it to your farm and effectively create an automated fuel system using garden beds. Obviously, you can adjust both of these processes and better tailor them to your current production system. I'm going to go ahead and develop and test a legitimate system that uses both the compost and the water to help create this as a fuel source. Here's the mock system I quickly came up with. Over on the right is our storage for charcoal and drill heads. We have 2 storage cranes dropping both of those off. This goes into the water production line in blue. The water, charcoal, and drill heads get sent over here, go up and join the fertilizer system. Right here we have a garden harvester harvesting logs going into the shredder and composter. If you have extra charcoal, a more efficient way to do it is just to shred the charcoal instead of logs. So later in the game, you wouldn't even need a different source of logs for your fertilizer. You could just use the charcoal that the original fuel farm creates. Then all of this will go through. The drill heads and charcoal will be picked up and put back into the system, while the water, seeds, and compost go into the garden beds. And then of course, after all the logs are harvested, they go into the kiln to make even more fuel. So basically, the system is just fuel creating more fuel. Now let's activate the garden harvester and let it run. Now with all the information and different examples that I've given you, hopefully you're able to take it and use it. I hope you're able to more completely understand how all the different garden beds actually work and the best ways to use them. I hope you can make your farms even better and make even more money. So good luck and thanks for watching.